Chapter 13: Food Resources. How is food produced? Global food production can be broken down into three categories. 76% croplands, 17% rangelands, and 7% fisheries.
Food production has skyrocketed over the last 50 years. It has increased due to increased technology, fertilizers, irrigation, and pesticides. Half of all calories consumed come from wheat, rice, and corn. This increase in food production has led to deforestation, pollution, lack of water, overgrazing, overfishing. Industrialized agriculture involves creating monocultures to produce huge quantities of single crops. Plantations in tropical developing countries provide bananas, coffee, sugarcane, and etc. to developed countries. Traditional subsistence agriculture involves using mostly human and animal labor to produce enough food for a family's survival. In some cases, enough food can be cultivated to sell for additional income. Most traditional farmers simultaneously grow several different crops to their land to reduce the odds of losing crops to pests or bad weather. The Green Revolution is the term for the vast increase in the yields per unit area of cropland over the 50 years. Monocultures of selectively bred high-yield crops, large inputs of water, fertilizer, and pesticides, multiple crops grown in one growing season. The first Green Revolution spread through developed countries from 1950 to 1970, and the second Green Revolution continues to spread through developing countries now. But are we on the limit of our productivity? Undernutrition is the chronic condition by which individuals consume fewer calories than necessary each day. Undernourished children are susceptible to stunted growth and weakened immune system. Malnutrition occurs when a person's diet is deficient in one or more key nutrients. This occurs with a monotonous high-carb diet. Marasmus is a combination of undernutrition and malnutrition when the diet lacks both calories and protein. It most commonly affects mothers and children. Kwashiorkor is caused by a straight lack of protein in little kids who are being weaned from breastfeeding. It causes stunted growth and mental retardation. Some major environmental effects of food production are habitat destruction, air pollution, soil problems, water pollution, and human health. By increasing the world crop production, humanity has ventured into genetic engineering, which is the process of transferring a gene that codes for a desired trait from one organism to another. For example, some plants have genes which help them to resist damage from frost. This gene is removed from the original organism and spliced into the DNA of valuable crops, such as tomatoes, that does not have natural protection from the cold. Any organism to which a foreign gene has been induced is called genetically modified organism, or GMO. Another example is the gene of bioluminescence, glowing in the dark, which has been transferred from jellyfish to zebrafish, which are sold as pets, glowfish. About 2/3 of the food sold in the US supermarkets have at least one ingredient that came from a GMO, so it's likely that you eat them all the time. The vast majority of soybeans, cotton, and corn are GMO. The advantages of GMOs are obvious. Genes for any number of favorable characteristics be inserted into a crop. The results could be plants that require less fertilizer or water, are resistant to rust or insects, grow faster, taste better, etc. The disadvantages to GMOs are unclear. There is no evidence that they could cause damage to human health or the environment. But this does not mean that these crops are not in some way harmful.
Rangeland is land that is too steep, dry, or otherwise unable to support the growth of crops, but is fertile enough to grow vegetation to feed grazing animals. Rangeland is used to support cattle, sheep, and goats, over 3.3 billion worldwide.
Livestock can be raised in an open range where they are pretty much left on their own, or they can be numerically herded to find rangeland in areas where rainfall is sparse and unpredictable. A feedlot is densely populated enclosure of animals that are fattened for slaughter by being fed grain or cropland. Feedlots dramatically increase the productivity of an operation as opposed to letting the animals roam free to graze. Unfortunately, feedlots contribute to many types of environmental problems. Some of them are insane amounts of manure that are typically stored in shallow lagoons or recycled banks into the soil. They cause the manure mixing with drinkable water and causes health problems. Secondly, livestock and fish raised for food eat 65% of the grain produced in the United States. Meanwhile, the other people in the world starve to death. Livestock are responsible for more than half of the fresh water used in the United States when you account for the irrigation for the crops that they need, the water they use to wash away and store the manure, and the water they actually drink. More than 1/3 of all fossil fuels consumed in the United States are used for animal production. Cattle belch and fart methane are potent greenhouse gases. And finally, increased spread of infectious diseases due to high population densities.
Overgrazing occurs when excessive numbers of domestic livestock graze for too long in the same location. Undergrazing is also a possible problem since dying plants are left to accumulate. In order for a rangeland to reach peak productivity, it should be moderately grazed, enough to get rid of the dead and dying plants, but not so much as to prevent the renewable growth of the vegetation. 64% of the publicly owned rangelands in the western US are in either fair or poor condition, which means that they are producing less than 50% of their potential productivity.
Trawling is the dragging of a net along the ocean floor. This type of fishing in particular does a lot of damage to the seafloor habitat by scraping everything up. Purse seine fishing is trying to catch surface-dwelling fishing with a big net with a drawstring to close it up. Dolphins are often caught in these types of nets as they are pursuing the same tuna as fishermen. Longline fishing is putting down a huge fishing line with a bait hooked every few feet to try to catch several large feet at once. These hooks often entice large animals that have no commercial value. Drift net fishing is letting a huge net float out in the water and waiting to see what gets stuck in it. These nets kill whatever comes entangled in it, including the drowning and air-breathing animals. Bycatch is the term for any animal that is caught that is not the intended target. This includes not only large animals such as shark and turtles, but also smaller fish that serve as the food supply for many desirable targets. The sustainable yield is the amount of fish of a species that can be harvested in a year without the decline in the population for the next year. Determining the sustainable yield for a wild species is difficult. Exceeds the sustainable yield, prolonged overfishing will likely lead to commercial extinction, which is when the population of fish becomes so low that it is no longer profitable to fish for.
Su especificidad en relación con la actividad general de la pesca radica precisamente en que en la piscicultura el desarrollo de los peces se da con la intervención, el conocimiento y la acción del
Countries around the world rely on a stable food supply with relatively low prices that their people can afford. Governments subsidize agriculture heavily to allow farming to be a profitable business and to keep prices artificially lower than they would on an open market. Organic farming means that the crops are grown in a sustainable manner without the heavy inputs of pesticide and fertilizer that characterize the Green Revolution. In addition, the food cannot be genetically modified, irrigated to kill pests, or grown with sludge from sewage. In many grocery stores, organic produce is available at a slightly higher price than traditionally grown fruit and vegetables.